So we're going to talk a little bit about, obviously, buying a system and job prospects. The one thing to keep in mind when you go to buy a microscope system, I would say, is you're going to get what you pay for. If you see equipment, say 20,000 American dollars, 18,000 American dollars, $21,000 American dollars, like they're all sort of in that same neighborhood. Then you see one for like 5,000 American dollars, the same. And they advertise they're doing the same thing, well, you might want to scratch your head and say, something doesn't quite add up, because we sort of have a saying, I'm sure you have the same one, you sort of get what you pay for, okay? So if you pay a little more, sometimes you get what you pay for. So keep that in mind when we talk about these things today. Okay, so the main thing though is when you go to buy something, as you've seen, there's turf, there's frap, there's fret, there's super resolution, there's all these just different techniques. So you really got to sit down and think to yourself, what does my lab or what does my group, what is our main focus? What are we going to do? Okay? Like, what is the real question or the real technique that we need to address in this particular setting? Like here you have a confocal already, so it'd be sort of silly to go buy, a confocal for your own lab if you had the money to do it. So you've also got to look at the resources around you. At Case and in America, we were sort of, I guess you could say, sort of flying high for a while. We had a lot of money. We had a lot of duplicate, I'd say, systems, sort of overlapping kind of systems at our institution. But times have gotten much tougher for us in America lately, and they've really, like the main administration has tried to more or less keep an eye on everything. So we don't have two of the exact same spectrophotometers, or we don't have two of the exact same kind of centrifuges. So we've definitely tried to tighten our belts back in America. And I think the thing is, if you have something that's available here, again, this whole idea of networking, talking to your colleagues, working with your colleagues, working with other labs, see what they have. If you can use it, why buy it yourself, right? I'm always a big fan of, trying to save money, because here I think it's the same thing. Most of your money, this is all tax money, right? And I'm guessing most of you pay taxes, or all of you pay taxes to some extent. It's your money. So don't be wasteful. Same thing in America. Our research is funded by our government, mostly, the academic research especially. And I always feel responsible. That's my money, because I'm paying taxes for that, okay? So again, you're gonna be looking at cells. You're gonna be looking at slides. Hopefully I've given you a little bit of guidance on what kind of microscope to pick out, an inverted, an upright. The one nice thing about the inverted, you can look at plates and cells, right? So it's got a dual use as opposed to just an upright. So, something that simple can expand the application of the instrument, okay? Okay, so we talked a lot about the objectives, and the objectives are, if you have a little bit extra money, you'd like to put your money in your objectives, because that's where you get the resolution. Now, if you're going to do everything low power, low magnification, and you're just going to be, taking more or less pretty pictures, then, there's no sense buying a high numerical aperture oil immersion lens if you're not going to use it. So you're going to, again, buy what you need, but anytime, because I'll have a lab come up to me and say, well, we have this amount of money, we'll put together some kind of microscope system for them, and we have a little bit left over, then I start buying high-end objectives. That's where I try to put my money at the end. And because really when you think about it, the microscope is really just something to hold the objective. The objective is the heart of the system, okay? So that's where you'd want to spend your money. I'd say the next most important place to spend your money would be the camera. Again, the first talk we saw with let me think, Dr. CI, right? And his pictures, remember, weren't very pretty. But he was he was using his camera as a detector, okay? So then you would buy a camera, in his case, probably a very expensive camera, but one with a high quantum efficiency that allows you to collect light and allows it to be brought into the system. So his camera needs would be different than the camera needs of like somebody like I met your husband yesterday, who works with insects and takes pictures of insects. Well, taking pictures of an insect is a much different camera application than trying to measure calcium going back and forth in a cell. A totally different world, okay? So again, a totally different camera would be purchased for either application. So a camera is just not a camera, and I hope over the course of this course that I've shown you that, okay? Okay. So, like I said, even if you're just doing something real simple, maybe you can just use your cell phone. I mean, I've seen a lot of people do it, even back in the US. If you just need that quick picture, nothing special, don't really need to publish it or whatever, just documenting it, say, hey, I did this experiment today. You can do that. You can use something like that. I've seen this on the internet, people using it, so it's got to be true, right? Everything on the internet's true. True? Correct? Not really. Anyway, I haven't used that myself, but these are things you can use as less expensive alternatives. Okay. So if you buy a microscope, even if you don't, if you're tight on budget and you're buying a microscope, I always suggest at least if you can at least get a camera port on it for a camera, even if you don't have the money now, you may have the money in the future. And if you don't have the ability for that microscope to have a camera mounted onto it, then you'd have to go back, rebuy a different microscope stand, and you sort of put yourself behind. So I think anytime you buy a microscope, I'd recommend to get at least the port to put a camera on. And as funds become available in the future, you can always add on to it. Because I've seen it numerous times where I wish we just would have, had an opportunity to be able to put a camera on this microscope. But without the forethought, they just weren't thinking ahead. So it's always a good idea to leave a place for a camera on a microscope. Okay, and again, the whole idea of do I really need to buy it? I'm a core lab where I'm at. And the nice thing about the core lab system in the United States, which you have here too, is not every lab can afford a very, very expensive instrument like this confocal. And not only that, here then you'd have an expert person being able to run it. Because as you can see, these high-end systems has become very technical. Like the SEM here, some of these other instruments you have on campus, I'm sure, mass spec, things like that. They're very technical. And it's hard for every single individual in the lab to learn to run something like that. You can't become an expert anymore. I mean, I guess my expertise lies in optical microscopy, and I'm having trouble keeping up with just that field. It's just so, it's developing so quickly and so overwhelming that I can't even keep up with that, and that's all I do all day, is that. So obviously, by working in your lab, all your other projects, you can't expect to be an expert at everything. Okay, so take advantage of these people that are experts, if you can, and use their equipment. Sure, you might pay to use it, but it's better off to pay them to use it and do it correctly than, buy your own and maybe you won't know how to use it. So again, think ahead, think ahead. Okay, and as you've probably heard me say quite a bit this week about different things, I always like to stay simple if I can, okay? I like to keep it simple. I figure that's usually the best way to do things. If you have to get more complex, you get more complex, but start simple, start basic, start easy, start with something that works, okay? And the other thing is, don't let the salesman take you down the road. When I worked for a company back in the US, like I worked in sales from like 2002 to 2005, somewhere in that neighborhood. I had a system down in West Virginia that I went down. The previous salesman had sold it before me. I went down there and I looked at it, and the application was looking at bacteria. So they were going to look at bacteria all day long. And I sat down at the scope, you know, put the slide on, started looking. I'm looking through the eyepieces. And I'm looking, and I'm looking, and then I'm starting to look at the levers. I'm looking at other things. And then eventually it dawned on me that the eyepieces don't work. The way they set up the microscope, the light wouldn't even go to the eyes. The light would only go to the camera. It was one of the strangest things I've ever seen. And I'm thinking, well, if you bought this system and they brought this in and you sat down and looked at it and you couldn't even look at the eyepiece, wouldn't you say, hey, something's wrong here. This doesn't work. Because, you know, I mean, the camera's great, don't get me wrong. But there's nothing like looking with your own eyes. I mean, your eyes, you know, we hear about these, you know, pixel values of your cameras and stuff. I think I read somewhere your eyes were like 324 megapixels. So, you know, your eyes are always good. So don't let the salesman take you down the road. Don't let them, you know, talk you into something you don't want. So when you go to buy something, have a really good idea what you want. Do your research in advance before you start bringing the salesman in, okay? Because remember, sales is about making money, right? Okay, so what we used to do is we used to sell this, okay? We'd sell this bottle, little bottle, optical cleaning solution, okay? Real nice, clean your microscope. The thing is too, when you clean your lenses here, you want to use something like this. You don't want to use anything that has detergent in it, because detergent will tend to eat away at the glue that holds the lenses in place. So the one we use in the United States is called Sparkle. So we'd sell this bottle right here, okay, for about 20 bucks, okay? Optical cleaning solution, right? Optical cleaning solution was this. Okay, we dump it out of this bottle, put it in this bottle. This stuff's $1.99, okay? So it's sales, right? It's sales. Okay, sales is about making money. So like I'm saying, on the big scale with the, you know, cameras and such and microscopes that are very expensive things. And one of the reasons they're so expensive is when you look at it from a microscope salesman's point of view, how many are you really going to sell? I mean, it's not like something you have in your house. It's not like something, you know, everybody has or every school has. You're only going to sell so many. Like this university, you've got that one confocal, that might be it for the university. You might never gonna get another one. So the equipment is expensive. You don't sell a lot of them. There's a decent markup, but you know, be wise on your end too. Okay, they're salesmen. I mean, I was one. I know how it works. Okay, again, put your money in the objectives. And like we've said repeatedly in this course, NA is everything. If you have the money, you know, if you can buy a 0.8 or you could buy like a 1.2 NA, well, if you got the money, buy the 1.2. I mean, it's going to help you down the road, especially if you do cellular organelle work or something like that, okay? It will help. Again, my next priority then would probably be the camera, sensitivity, or just documentation. That's where I'd go next. Next thing I like, it would be motorized stage, okay? Because I think we talked a little bit about how that allows you to do a time lapse. That allows you to do multiple spots at one time. But especially for time lapse, you don't have a motorized stage. You could do time lapse, but you're stuck to one point. Motorized stage, you can do multiple wells and do multiple experiments at once, okay? And of course, like anything, like in our body, you know, our brain sort of runs the show. The computer runs the show. This happened, I don't know how many times in sales, when I was in sales. We would sell a computer along with the system. Like we'd sell the system and we'd sell a computer and we would do line item quotes. So our computer would come in like, you know, say $3,000. Now you could probably buy the same computer for $1,500 or close to the same computer. But we had it all configured, all spec'd out, everything ready to go, make it work correctly. So I don't know how many hours I spent because somebody would buy their own computer and then I'd try to get it to work. I mean, it was an absolute nightmare. Okay, nothing more frustrating than spending $200,000 and nothing works right. Okay, so don't, you know, if you run out of money, don't go low on the computer, especially these days. I mean, the cost has come way down. You have all this RAM power. You have all these really fast processors. Remember, it's the brain of the system. So I would definitely pay attention to what the reps are telling you to run these massive systems. Like this confocal, I'm sure just came with the computer. You didn't have the option to buy it yourself, I would think. because they know you can't just be, sticking a Dell on there and it's going to run that. It's got to be spec'd out correctly, and lots of other factors. Because I actually had at one point, I sold these little Nikon cameras, and they would work, like I'd go to somebody's lab, put it in, it would work great. I'd go to the next lab, I'd put it in, it would work great. I go to the next lab, it wouldn't work at all. And it's like they're all Dell computers. And they're all spec'd out about the same. And I'm like, what? And another one wouldn't work, one would work. And what it turned out was certain chipsets, like something you never think of in a computer, just were incompatible with that particular camera. So just little things like that. So it's always better to probably go along with the salesman's advice or whatever on a computer so it doesn't end up screwing up your system. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the big four. The big four microscope companies. We mentioned this briefly. There's two. Yes.
What about the detector part?
About the detector?
In camera, CCD or?
Oh, I mean, it looks on the application like basically most things you can get away with just the CCD. Now you have the EMCCDs, which have more sensitivity. But again, it comes down to, do you want to go fast? Do you want to, or are you just trying to get a pretty picture? So, I mean, if you have the money for the EMCCDs, that's the newest stuff right now. And then there's CMOS. There's a lot of other speed applications. But it looked like what you had for yours looked pretty good, I thought, for what you had. So, but yeah, but there's always something better coming out. So just keep that in mind. But usually when you buy something like yours, like it's a, they bought the Zeisscope, they put the system together. A lot of times they've thought this through, like because they want your application to work, like I said. Because the good thing is if your application works, then they come to you and they say, could we like cite your publications, in our thing and sell it to the next person? So there's an vested interest for them to make sure you have something that works for your application too. It works both ways. Okay, so the four big companies in microscopes, again, two Japanese companies, Olympus and Nikon, and German companies, Leica and Zeiss. Okay, these are the big four. There's no American company. There's nobody else. The Japanese and the Germans handle it all. So just in general, Olympus makes good, solid equipment. Usually it's the lowest price, not by much, but usually they make good stuff. It works well. I know a lot of people work for Olympus. The stuff's like really solid. I mean, I have one scope's like 15 years old. I mean, it just works. It's solid. It's been, used constantly for 15 years, and it's just a great piece of equipment. Nikon is who I used to actually, I was a dealer for Nikon. I thought they made really good equipment again. Nikon cameras are just absolutely fabulous. They're very good optics. Their microscopes are extremely good. They've gotten into a little more high-tech applications here and there. Okay, Leica, Germans. This company's really up and coming. They're starting to become one of the more dominating companies, I think, in microscopy. They have a very large technical staff, a very large sales staff. They seem to do a very good job from everything I see. My personal scope, it works a Leica, and I'll explain that here in a minute why, even though I work for Nikon. And then Zeiss is, you don't see as many around maybe. They are definitely considered with the best optics, like we had heard yesterday, where he was praising Carl Zeiss and their optics. They're considered like the king of optics. They're usually the most expensive. They make good stuff. I've always had a little trouble with their software, but I haven't had a chance to really sit down and work with it a ton. But they make good, solid stuff. So I think the take-home message is they're all good, okay? They're all good. So the other thing you see is these other little companies. Now, I don't know how much presence they have in India, but this one company called Keyence, they keep showing up and doing demos at my institution. They sell some things. A lot of times these companies buy equipment from, they might buy something from Zeiss or Olympus and sort of modify it, sort of like your system where companies will come in, buy a Zeiss microscope and specialize it. They'll add on a special camera, some special filters, and try to package it as a special application, okay? But a lot of times these companies are using the Zeiss, the Olympus, the Nikon, the Leica as the base model. Thor Labs, another big company. They had a huge display when I went to Neuroscience in 2015. And Neuroscience, that is the meeting of imaging every year. The big neuroscience conference in the US is where all the microscope companies come with all their people, and they try to show off. Okay, that is the big imaging. Now, if you ever want to go to a big imaging meeting, it's neuroscience. It's the big one. Okay, so Thor Labs does one of those companies where it's sort of, maybe people are sort of clever. A lot of times they put together their own kind of systems. They sell a lot of components and things, and let you sort of build your own way through it. Okay, so I always get this question. People come up to me and go, what do I buy? What do I buy? What do I buy? Which company? Which one's the best? Okay. And I like them all, and I'm not getting paid, right? But like I said, they're all quality. They really are. So my answer is the one that gives you the best rep. Okay, the sales rep. The one you can call when you have a problem, the one who's around, and the one who understands their product. Because when something breaks or something goes wrong and you can't use it, and you're on the phone and nobody's helping you, and you're just going around in a big circle, it's frustrating. I think we've all probably experienced that with a product or something you've bought for your own home. And everybody, some companies have better reputations than others. Same thing, I'd say all the microscope companies are good, but at the local level, who helps you the most? Who helps you? Okay, the reason I have a Leica, the guy is on top of everything. Something breaks, the next day he's like, well, I might have something in the garage that I can replace it with until we get to, until you're able to buy one or this or that. He's very helpful. He helps me a lot. He's gone above and beyond. Like this trip, I'm on vacation, or I'm not on vacation. My wife thinks I'm on vacation, but I'm gone. I'm out of the country, right? He told me, leave my phone number here by the scope. Anything goes wrong, I'll help the people out who use your scope while you're gone. Okay, a little bit of extra service, a little bit above and beyond. That's what you look for, because basically, especially at the lower levels, the equipment is pretty much all the same. Okay, now I don't know if you have this opportunity in India. In America, some institutions were required to get more than one quote. Like we're required to, get a quote from Olympus and then have the same system, get one from Nikon, get one from Leica. And then if one's more expensive, if we like it more, we have to write a justification why we want it. Okay, but the thing is, again, remember, if everybody's saying, 18,000, 19,000, 20,000, and some company you never heard of comes in and says, oh, we can do that for 5,000, you guys sit there and go, what? You guys scratch your head. Because I have people that have these microscopes at work, and they'll go, can you come over and take a look at it? It's not working. I'll go over, and I'll look at this thing, and like a regular tissue culture scope in America, like a nice solid, by one of these big four companies, it's probably $3,000. And they're solid, last you 15 years, 20 years. So I'll go over to these labs, and they'll go, can you look at this and fix it? And it's so flimsy, it's from this, fly-by-night company. And I go, what'd you pay for this? Like, $700. And it's like, well, that's what you got here. You got $700 worth of stuff that doesn't work. Okay, so, quality, the big four is probably the way to go usually. Okay. Okay, so like I said, the big four all make pretty good quality scopes and cameras at the low end. At the low end, like the not super demanding technical aspects, and get a demo. Now, at the really, really, really high end, super resolution and real specialty kind of areas, then there is a difference in the companies. Some are a little better at certain things, others are a little bit better. There's new technology coming out at the time. So what I would suggest, especially at the high end, get a demo. If you're going to spend, say something really big, say you're going to spend $1 million or almost $1 million, if you can go see it in Bangalore working, and you're thinking about buying it, it's worth taking that trip to Bangalore to go see it work, to take your samples there and say, hey, let me see how it works for my stuff. It's worth it, because nothing worse than making a big, huge financial mistake by buying something that doesn't work. When you get into the really big money, you want to see a demonstration, or at least have them take you somewhere you can see that instrument in operation, okay? Because you'd be amazed. There's some really expensive equipment that just does not work correctly, okay? Remember, it's sales, it's advertising, it's, you gotta check it for yourself though. Okay, so, like I said, I told you you can email me at this email once I leave here if you have any questions about any equipment or anything we talked about in the course. just like my personal email, I'll be leaving where I work at the end of, or at the beginning of April. Okay, I'll be moving to Florida. I'll be moving out of Ohio. And like I said, I'm out of the business, so I'm not getting paid. So, you know, I give advice and I'm, you know, willing to give my opinion, I guess. So, like I said, feel free to shoot me an email. Just put something in the subject of like India microscope course or something so it catches my eye. Because, you know, you get hundreds of junk emails and it's hard to see everyone. But if you put something like that, I'll go, oh yeah, okay. Okay. So, so yeah, my last day at Case is going to be April 3 at the moment. I'm going to move to Florida and I'd like to teach. I don't have a job yet, but I'm looking right now. And I think a lot of it was at Case. I really didn't have that much of an opportunity to teach, and like giving me the opportunity here to teach like this has been great because it reminds me this is what I really like to do. So again, I appreciate you letting me come in and do this for you because it reminded me this is what I really love to do, and I'd like to do it for the rest of my career now. Okay. Okay, so jobs. Now we've talked a little bit about the academic jobs. Okay, and I know a lot of you expressed interest to go to America or go to another country. Again, I think it comes down to networking. If you know somebody here, you know that's going there or is a professor there or something, it helps to know the person. And we could all sit here and fool ourselves and say, well, you know, I have a really good scientific publication record, which is important. Don't get me wrong, it's important. But you know, if you put yourself in the position of a hiring manager, okay, like let's say you work for a company and you're a hiring manager, right? The last thing you really want to do is the last thing you want to do from that point of view is put an ad on the internet. Because you're going to have all these resumes coming in, all these CVs coming into you. You don't know these people from anywhere. You have no idea if they're good, bad, crazy, not crazy, whatever. That's the last thing you want to do. If you're a hiring manager, you want to have somebody in the company go, oh, well, you know, there's already somebody here at our company we think can do that job. You want to try to hire internal. Or you say to yourself, well, you know, I know this person, and this person's recommending this person, and they're a good person, and, you know, that seems to be somebody they know, and they speak highly of them, so that's, you know, who you'd want to hire. You don't want to just go out on the internet, because it's the worst place, because you don't know who you're getting, plus you have to deal with hundreds of applicants, okay? So right now in America, our budgets are down. Our budgets are down, and we're sort of wondering what is going to happen, because we all know, you know, we have President Trump now. It's a big question mark. So there's a lot of nervousness, a lot of waiting. I wouldn't be surprised too if a lot of labs are sort of just sitting back in their money and go, well, I'm just going to wait a little bit to hire until I see what happens, how these things clear out. So my guess is at this particular moment might not be the best time to I mean, try obviously, but don't get discouraged, because I think a lot of labs are just waiting to see what happens. It's sort of a wait and see attitude with a lot of things in America right now, because the Trump administration's so new, okay? But it's something to think about. But again, that personal interaction, like I think I recommended to a lot of you, if you have a chance, like if you have a lab you really would like to work in, if you have a chance to go to a meeting where that person is and actually meet them in person, there's a lot to be said for that. And then, like I also said, as opposed to just sending, you know, an email where it's just, you know, click delete, actually send them a letter. Because we very rarely get letters anymore. Once in a while I'll get a letter and I'll open it because it's like, wow, I got a letter. This is so strange. I will actually take the time to read it. As opposed to an email where it's just, you know, we get hundreds a day. Just click, 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 delete, 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 right? So, you know, if you can't meet that person, if you can't do something in person, send them that letter. It's that personal touch, that personal interaction that might help you get the job. But again, it's all about network, okay? Like I said, try to meet the person if you can. Cite them in your work, okay? Make it real clear that, you know, you appreciate their work and you respect their work. An email's too easy to ignore. But the old-fashioned mail, people read it. I mean, and it's like, wow, this is so weird to get a letter. I'll actually read it. Okay. So the big thing that we look for in America right now is writing, okay? We like people that can write. I mean, some lab jobs are people just write. That's all they do is write. Because the competition to get money is so fierce and so intense that you need that extra edge. You need somebody who can really write. who can really explain the idea, who can really sell the idea. Okay. Now, here I really don't know how you show that. I guess when you have your own publications, just make sure they're well written. One of my jobs at work that I do awful lot is I have an awful lot of foreign primary investigators, foreign members in the lab from different countries. I check it for them. They give me papers all the time, and I correct it to tighten up that English. Okay, so I'm a big editor of a lot of papers and a lot of grants and such. So if you know somebody who's a really good writer and you're trying to write something, you're trying to write that cover letter to that professor to get that job, okay, find somebody who can help you. Make that really sound good, okay? Because you're not, I mean, English isn't your native tongue. Just like, I can't speak your language. I couldn't write in your language. I'm sure it would be very clunky if I did. Get that person who knows it and let them tighten it up for you, okay? Because it sounds good, you read it, but you don't realize, especially with like pronouns and adjectives, it just doesn't sound right if you're an American reading that paper, okay, to put it into like our type of English, okay? So this is the one reason, I mean, a lot of the Americans don't, like when you go to labs in America, you'd be amazed how few Americans there are, because there's a lot of other opportunities now. I think 20, 25 years ago, before computers caught on, if you wanted to do science in America, you did biomedical research, because that was it. That was the big game in town. But now there's computers, there's really advanced engineering, there's a lot of business opportunities. So I think a lot of times people that are very smart that might have gone into biomedical research in the past now go into these other fields. So, I mean, you have a lot of really good American postdocs, a lot of really good ones, but the problem is there's not a big number of them. They're in very high demand because they can write. That's their big thing. They can write, okay? Okay, so let me talk a little bit about like going about getting a job. I had a woman just come to Cleveland not too long ago. She came from India, and she'd come over, like her husband was working in a lab. She had just come over, and she told me she'd really like to work in imaging. Okay, her friend steered her to me to talk to. And she had done a postdoc in Germany in a lab and run a whole lot of confocal. And I started talking to her, and I could tell right away that, wow, she knows exactly what she's talking about. She's not just, talking nonsense. She's talking facts. So if you really want to pursue microscopy as a career, the thing to do is to get a job probably in like a core lab. And some of the core labs in America are really big. Like they have a lot of different microscopes available, a lot of different techniques. You'll see, there's labs, you'll see turf, you'll see fret, you'll see frap on a daily basis. These things where I might see it, once in a great while. So there is big labs. So I steered her towards the Cleveland Clinic because I didn't think we had anything really at our institution to offer. Now she's got a nice position in a core lab there, learning tons and tons and tons of techniques. And now I'm leaving, and I told her I'm leaving, and I told her, you could take my job, probably, but I think you're better off staying where you're at. Just because you're exposed to so many more things in that environment than you would be at my environment, that if you want to go on for this with the living, I'd stay there, okay? But again, she had that postdoc, she did a lot of microscopy. That opened the door for her. She knew what she was talking about. She understood how it worked, and that's what opened the door for her. Because when you get to the high level technical, you can't fool somebody. Like you can't walk in and say, I know how to run a confocal. You have to either know how or you don't. You can't, at the lower levels, you might be able to fool somebody, you can do something, you might be able to lie a little bit and say you can do a technique, but on a job interview or something, if you say you can do that, you better know how to do it. Because once you start talking technical with somebody, it becomes painfully obvious if they know what they're talking about or not. Because I've had numerous people come say, they know, oh, I know how to do this, and then you start talking, you use a few of the technical words, and it's like they obviously don't. Okay. So there's not just, now I'm going to talk about sort of in America, there's not just straight sales jobs, but there's also a lot of technical support jobs. So if you really become an expert in one thing, and I'm not talking just microscopy, like mass spec is in demand, big time. Anytime I talk to a recruiter, and recruiters are people who get paid by companies to find somebody because they're trying to find somebody with these really limited technical skills. So they actually have companies called recruiting companies that will go around and try to find people like that. And the big one right now in America is mass spec. If you can be really good at mass spec, they'll like beat a path to your door to find you, okay? So there's a lot of technical jobs. If you become really, really good at one technique, really, really good and expert, then you could work for a company being an expert in that technique. Okay, it's not a sales job, but you'd go around and visit customers and help them. Okay, those jobs pay great, tons and tons and tons of travel. Okay, and anytime I look at this, it's a tough job for somebody who's married. If you have a family, it's tough. Because I did this. I did traveling sales. I was married, and I liked the job. My wife hated it. Okay, okay. I thought it was sort of cool, but you know, she was home with the kids, and then it got to the point where, you know, I missed my kids, I missed my wife, and you know, money's not everything. So it took me a little while to figure this out, but I realized pretty quickly. I only did it for like a couple years. Most of the time I was trying to get out, actually, but that it just wasn't for me. Okay, I mean, I did like it, but like I said, money's not everything. You know, your family's very important. You have to have your priorities straight. So I chose my family. Okay. Okay. Again, that neuroscience meeting is great for imaging jobs. All the companies are there. You know, if you go to these big meetings, don't just talk to the people at the posters, and you know, go talk to the companies too. I mean, you're there, they're there. Talk to them too. Don't just talk to the science people. Talk to the company people. Talk about, hey, what's going on? You know, are you looking for something? I'm really good at this. You know, this is how it starts. Okay. We talked about that confocal listserv. We talked about that first day. I showed like my email. I'm set up for that. I get confocal things all the time. Again, a great network for questions. If you're gonna be on the confocal a lot, just common problems that arise in confocal. People ask questions. Don't be afraid to use stuff like this. People on those listservs are more than happy to help you with the question. Okay. The big website in America now is Indeed.com. It used to be called Monster.com. I think they're still there, but this seems to be the big job one now. Just a sort of generic, you know, all kinds of jobs. Okay. But the nice thing about these, you can set up like an email alert. You probably have the same thing in India, I'm sure. You set up like you have Indeed. Okay, so you guys know Indeed. Okay. But again, it's all networking. It's all who you know. That's what it is. I talked a little bit about recruiters. Recruiters are people that their job is to find that right person. Okay, so recruiters will actually dig through the scientific literature and find somebody who's done this or that technique, because some company's looking for that. Okay, that's what biotech recruiters do. And I've talked to quite a few biotech recruiters, because I was thinking about getting back in an imaging game now that my kids were grown, and I've sort of decided against that now. I'd rather teach. But the crazy thing was, every time I get one on the phone, they go, "Do you know somebody that does mass spec? Do you know somebody that does mass spec?" I was like, "Wow, this is crazy." You know, in U.S. business, LinkedIn. I don't know if you have LinkedIn here. Probably. Yeah, these things are universal now. But this is the big thing. So if you send me, like I actually hire a replacement. I've hired a couple people over the years. So first thing is I get their resume, right? I look at their name. So what do you think the first thing is I do? I go to LinkedIn. What do you think the next thing is I do? I go to LinkedIn. I go to Facebook. I go to Facebook, right? I go to Facebook. So don't have something stupid on there. I mean, don't have, some people have just ridiculous things on Facebook. Don't get caught in these chats, because employers, they're going to go there. They're going to look at that, because that's, LinkedIn's your business life. This is your personal life. And if your personal life's all over the place, crazy, it's like, wait a second, okay? So don't think people don't look at this stuff. Employers look at these things, okay? Like I said, number one thing I look at, number two thing I look at, okay? Because we all have, or a lot of us have a net presence now. So it's a public presence that an employer will look at, okay? So keep that in mind. Don't think it's hidden, okay? But the big thing is don't give up, okay? It's out there. Just keep trying. You'll find what you're looking for. Eventually hard work pays off in anything, okay? But I still think the best thing is just network, network, network. Make friends while you're here at Curula. You met some of these speakers. Make sure you say something to them, they remember you. It's just all about building a network, okay? Especially in today's world, it seems like, okay? And again, it's not about what you know, but it's who you know, okay? So keep that in mind. Like I said, you got any questions, I'm around the rest of the day. And I think what we're going to do here now is, where's Srijit?
We're going to have a tea break after this.
Okay. Okay. I think so. I don't know if we're going to have a tea break and then we're going to have the exam, or if we're going to have an exam and then tea break.
Have you finished the presentation?
Yes. So I'm thinking what we're going to do is, I think we're going to do the exam next, is what we were talking about earlier. Okay, so I think we're going to do the exam here soon. I don't know exactly where the paperwork is, but does anybody have any questions about what we've talked about up to this point that you might see here in a few minutes on paper? No? Anything? Anything I wasn't clear about, which I'm sure there was a lot of things I wasn't too clear about.
It's not just in America. Any country, people don't opt research, is that right?
Don't what?
Don't opt research.
Don't go.
They don't go for research. Any European country, any
You mean they'd rather do something else in general? Yeah, I'd say, yeah, researchers are a more limited amount of people, right? Right. Right. But I guess what I'm trying to say is years ago in America, there wasn't these other opportunities, especially before computers. Everybody went in biomedical research. Like if you want to do science, that's what you did. Whereas now, it's not just that. It's you have these other opportunities. So I think it's changed the dynamic of the whole thing. Okay, it's changed that it's the there's other alternatives. If you're scientifically minded, there's other alternatives besides just medical research. Okay, they didn't used to be there. Those things just didn't used to be there. I think it's the big thing. All right, so take a few minutes, think about. Well, we're gonna have a quiz on here, and
We'll have the exam, right? We'll have the exam.
yep, we'll have the exam, but I don't know what the exam is. So
Oh, no, we have it. The question paper is with one of our
okay,
research students.
so they have the exam. Okay. Okay. So what do they do? Pass it out.
I think so.
Okay. So you want to announce that, and then we'll get started. I've never given an exam in India, so it's all new to me how it works. In America, we have a lot of different kinds of exams. We'll have like multiple choice, like you're going to have today. But we also have these ones called Blue Book. So you get like this little blue paper book, and it's like you sit down, they ask a question, it's like just write, not just start writing. Those are the ones that are hard because you have to think the whole thing through. But those are the classes, you know, you learn a lot in too because you have to think the whole thing through.